right. Okay. So welcome to this workshop on Enneagram and Transformation. And I love teaching this workshop because to me, this was what took the Enneagram from being interesting to being transformative for me. When I understood how the transformation process worked and where the Enneagram fit into that, it allowed me to feel so empowered, but also it allowed me to have a lot of compassion for myself along the journey because I realized that the healing process is quite disruptive. And I think up until that point, I felt that if I'm healing, everything should be, better and softer and nicer and more whole and more beautiful. And it is, and it does trend in that direction. But there's also a lot of disruption. There's also a lot of confusion. There's also a lot of parts of the journey that feel like, is there something wrong with me or with this or what's happening? And when I settled into and understood how the process works and that part of the disruption is part of the beauty of it, and it actually belongs, and it's actually um, something that we all go through, something about that helped me to settle into the journey and actually start having fun with it. So tonight I'm going to walk you through sort of our timeline of transformation. And then we'll also dive into where the Enneagram fits into that. And then we'll just end with some resources that you can use as you're in this journey, wherever you happen to be. So that's where we're going. I'm going to share my screen for the slides and we will get started. All right. Can you see that? Can you just give me a thumbs up if we're good? Okay, awesome. All right. So I posted this on Instagram, but I just wanted to reiterate a few ways how the Enneagram maybe isn't helpful. And the reason I wanted to start with this is because all of these things are things that I did myself when I was first diving into the Enneagram. And so if you find yourself or have found yourself at any of these points, please know that it is normal. And sometimes even just acknowledging these things helps us to kind of wake up and say, yeah, why am I using the Enneagram like that? And I don't need to do that. So the Enneagram isn't helpful if it's an excuse for staying stuck. I think many of us have encountered people say, well, I'm just a 1, so that's how I am. Or, well, I'm just a 7, so you just got to take it or leave it. And, in one sense, yes, we are who we are. But if we're using the Enneagram to try and make us feel better about staying stagnant and not confronting some of the parts of us that are maybe wanting to fall away, then it's not really helpful, is it? It's not. The Enneagram is also, it's a means to an end. It's not an end in and of itself. The Enneagram is a tool to be used for transformation. And, if I bought a hammer and I was like, oh my gosh, I bought a hammer, I've made it. It would be kind of weird. It would be like, well, you're buying the hammer to do something, right? To hang a picture or to build, something for your kids. Having a hammer in and of itself is not a great thing to boast about, but using that hammer to do some good work is what it's for. And so it's the same with the Enneagram. It's not helpful if we see it as an end rather than what it should be, which is a means to an end. The Enneagram isn't helpful if it makes us feel overly confident in our knowledge. And what I mean by that is sometimes, and I love knowledge. I love learning all the things. I have so many books that I'm reading all at once, and maybe it's a problem, maybe it's not, but I can find that sometimes I substitute knowing something for actually experiencing it or actually allowing it to affect or transform me. And so if the Enneagram just kind of feeds into that for me and makes me feel so confident, oh, I know all of my types fixations. Look at that. It's like, okay, you know it, but how is that helping you. If I just know it and there's nothing beyond the knowing, it's not really helpful. In fact, it almost can make me feel superior. And that in and of itself can be a blinder to actually doing some change. The Enneagram isn't helpful if we use it to make assumptions about others without getting to know them. I lead with type 3, and so I love efficiency. I love efficiency. And yet, it's not helpful to assume, well, if I know your type, we can skip all the getting to know you stuff. I've already got it. I already know. I've read you like a book. And that's just not helpful, especially because one of the beautiful parts of the Enneagram is that it does make us feel seen. And so if it's used as a way to almost make us feel unseen because now we're clumped in with this type and people are making assumptions about us or what have you, then all of a sudden it kind of throws us back into feeling like, oh, I'm just a number. You don't actually see me. And that's just not helpful. It's not helpful. It's also not helpful if we miss its functionality because we're impressed with the way it makes us feel known. And so hopefully this doesn't sound like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, because it does make us feel known and that is beautiful. But again, if that's all it is, and being known doesn't wake us up to who we could be, right? Because our Enneagram type is who we think we are. And when we learn that, what it should do is intrigue us to say, but who am I really? I'm actually something beneath my type. I'm actually something more than my type. And so while it does feel good to feel known, what is actually being known in the Enneagram is our false self, not our true self. And when we know our false self more clearly, we're kind of wise to its little ways, and we can start to uncover our true self with more skill. But we don't want to stay in our false self and just feel so good that we're known as our false self. It's not the true knowing that we're actually longing for. And then finally, the Enneagram isn't helpful if it leaves us discouraged. And what I mean by that is, we're all going to feel at some points in our journey somewhat discouraged over where we are as opposed to where we'd like to be or who we are. Maybe you've had the experience of feeling like, I just don't want to be my type. I don't like that I'm this type. And, even in that reaction, we are invited into more inquiry around why we don't want to be that type and what inside of us rejects parts of our type. And that's a beautiful place to even explore further, where we can pour compassion on ourselves. But we are going to feel discouraged at some point in our journey. What we don't want to do is be left in that discouragement, to feel like, again, this idea that I don't like my type, but I am my type and I'm always going to be my type. And so now I just feel, blech, here I am, I'm stuck. Like I said, the Enneagram is an invitation to actually expand beyond our type. And so if it leaves us feeling stuck and discouraged, then it's actually not helpful, and we're not fully understanding what it could be for us. Enneagram knowledge is not the same as Enneagram work. I used to do a ton of workshops and I loved them. I loved teaching. And yet something inside of me was nagging away. Vanessa, are you just loving Enneagram knowledge, and are you avoiding Enneagram work? And we do need knowledge. We're going to get to that later on in the workshop, but it's not the same thing. We don't want to conflate them. They're two separate things. They're two things that go hand in hand, and they're beautiful, but they're not the same. So that begs the question, how do we change? What are the steps? What tools do we need? How do we move into greater freedom? How do we do this whole expanding beyond our type thing that you're talking about, Vanessa? So let's talk about that. I like to think of our transformation process as a journey, and this is not new to me. For hundreds of thousands of years, the idea of a journey, and that journey being transformative, is in all sorts of literature and archetypes. And actually, one of the most fascinating, just like a side note, but one of the most fascinating ideas in Enneagram world, and I think it is Beatrice Chestnut who talks about this, is the idea of the Odyssey, Homer's Odyssey, right? How he travels from his home, he goes to Troy, they do the Trojan War, and then he's traveling, coming back to his home, and he travels through 9 different lands, and actually each land correlates to the 9 different types. Is beautiful. But oftentimes the journey that we see in a lot of these literature examples is a journey where you're starting from one place and you're actually returning back to that same place, but as a completely different person. So therefore, the transformation is more about how we become different rather than actually ending up in a different place altogether. In the Odyssey, he leaves his home and he returns back to his home, but he is not the same. And that's similar to how we encounter our journey in the Enneagram. So I'm going to briefly run through these different places that we can land, these different islands, if you will. And then we'll go a little bit more deeper into each one of them once we kind of get our overview. So typically in our lives, we have a pain point that awakens us. The way that has always worked stops working or starts breaking down, and we experience some sort of pain that wakes us up. We try to find a solution, obviously. How do I fix this problem? But typically we start by trying to fix everything outside of me, right? I just need a new planner. I just need a new city. I just need a new partner. I just need it's all the exterior that I'm trying to change. And we inevitably encounter failure. These external fixes may work for a while, but they end up breaking down and we encounter frustration. Why isn't this working? I did all the things. This leads us to awakening number 2, and this is probably the most disruptive of the awakenings, because this is the one that alerts us that the changing is not in the external world, but in the internal world, right? We start to awaken to, oh, maybe I don't want to say the problem, but maybe I'm the one that needs to change. Maybe there's some inner work. And that's when we begin, if we're really awoken, to do self-awareness work, to start observing patterns in our behaviors, to start having some of these aha moments. And this is often where the Enneagram does come in for many of us, that awakening of, oh, this is why I always respond like this. Oh my goodness, I never noticed that was my pattern, but sure is, I can see it. And so now we're at this interesting place where we understand the problem. Okay, it's not that I need a new partner, a new apartment, a new job, a new whatever. I actually need to have a transformation. But even though I know it, I'm still feeling stuck, right? And we hit another bump in our sort of journey. And this place is where we typically have to do more than just understand the problem, but we need to sink into some sort of engagement of our actual body in the problem or in the solution. And what I mean by that is we often encounter this thing that I call the SlowMo moment. When you've had enough self-awareness and you've noticed your patterns long enough, you tend to come to this moment where before it even happens, you realize what's happening. Because oftentimes it's after the fact. After I did it, I kind of look back and I say, oh, look at what I did. Oh, I did the whole same thing again. Oh, I felt like I needed to prove myself and I over exaggerated such and such, but I'm doing it in hindsight. But if we do that enough, if we stay in the journey long enough, we start to come into these slow-mo moments where before it even happens, you realize, wait a minute, this is happening. I think I know what my pattern wants to do, and I have a decision to make. Am I going to do what I always do? Or do I have the courage to choose another way? So for me as a type 3, my pattern is to always overachieve and work myself to the bone. And so I can say, oh, wait a minute. This person is asking me for a meeting and I don't really have room in my calendar. This is my SlowMo moment. My instinct is to say, yeah, sure, of course, I'll make time for it. Let's do it this time. and I'll sacrifice my sanity, and I'll sacrifice my time with my family, and I'll sacrifice my sleep. And most of the times I don't even notice. I don't even have a second thought. It's just like, yep, I'll do it. Sure, no problem. Because I'm operating from a subconscious patterned behavior. And then all of a sudden I sit and I get that email and I pause long enough to say, ooh, I've seen this before. Now I have a choice. Now I can choose to do the same thing I always do, or decline the meeting and say, I'm so sorry, I don't have time for this. Maybe next time or whatever. And this is where we hit up against the fear threshold, right? Because the subconscious patterns, I'm going way too much into detail here. Anyways, the subconscious patterns that we have were developed out of a response to a fear. For the type 3, for myself, I'm afraid I'm not enough. And so my subconscious pattern of always saying yes to everything and overworking is because I fear that I'm not enough. And so in that SlowMo moment, even if I recognize what's happening, unless I've relocated my sense of security into a place of I have worth intrinsically, I don't have to earn it, even knowing that the moment is here and the moment is coming, if my worth is still located under me doing enough to earn my worth, even in that SlowMo moment, I will choose the same patterned behavior. Because I won't have the courage to step over the fear threshold and let go of my old patterns and decline the meeting and still feel like I'm enough. So this is a huge place where we can do Enneagram work and say, can I shift the location of my security, of my purpose, and my safety? And so if I can shift that, then I've crossed over the fear threshold, and finally we enter into a place of surrender, where I've let go, where a weight is lifted, where I achieve some form of enlightenment and transformation. So this is the journey. This is where we're moving along. And the Enneagram comes in at different points to aid us and help us and support us to make some of these transformations. So I'm going to go a little bit deeper into each of these points, and then we'll kind of take a look at what we can do. This very first point of awakening is probably something that happened early on in your life. I don't know, most of us, even in high school or college, tend to realize, I'm kind of having some problems here. I'm kind of losing a friend or failing a class or whatever. Maybe anxiety is coming in, right? So this happens pretty early on in our lives. Typically, this isn't working. I can't keep doing what I normally do. And typically, there's not a lot of self-compassion here. And honestly, this is what keeps us from noticing that we are the one who needs to change. Because if I don't have enough self-compassion, I actually can't handle seeing myself as the one who needs to change, right? That lack of self-compassion has me rejecting the fact that I might need to change and compels me to need it to be something outside of myself. Oh, if I can just have a friend who always affirms me, or if I can just have a job that's this or that, or if I could just be in a community that does this. The reason we need to look for external factors to be the problem is because we don't have the capacity of self-compassion to notice that it's within us that needs to change. And so even in that, I hope that gives us all compassion for our younger selves to say, yes, it felt easier to look outside of myself as the source of the problem, but only because I was not equipped with the self-compassion to do anything other than that. And oftentimes in this time of our lives, we're using our type to try and fix our type, which only drives us deeper into our type. So, if a type 2 is feeling like nobody loves them, what they're going to do to try and get love is to become more helpful and more provide for the needs of everyone around them, even more so than they were before, which means that they're using more of their type structure to get what they feel like they're lacking. And of course, that just reaffirms for them this belief that I'm only wanted because I do things for others and not because anyone actually cares for me. And of course, that just drives the sadness deeper into the type 2. So this is a hard place to be, but this is typically where we all start. And then, of course, we seek solutions. Again, it's got to be outside of myself. Oftentimes, we seek solutions in things like self-help books, religion, therapy, talking it out, finding systems or for organization or systems for this or that. And listen, none of these things are bad or wrong. I've benefited from self-help books. Religious structures can provide beautiful community and ideas, and therapy, of course. So all of these things aren't bad, but when all of these things are seen to be some sort of external savior for us to the neglect of understanding our own internal structure, they're just temporary fixes. Because behaviors stem from our beliefs. They're not independent items. And so to try to fix our behaviors without understanding what beliefs they're coming from becomes, again, a temporary fix. It's not going to provide lasting transformation or change. And there's a lot of discouragement that can come in this season. We're actually very much at risk of accepting the status quo at this stage of the transformation journey. We could say, well, you know what? I think I'm just going to be stuck here. I feel really discouraged. I don't know if I can grow beyond this. This is where some layers of bitterness might come. We might numb or become hard to some of these parts of ourselves that we don't love because, well, I've tried everything. I read all the books. I did all the religious things. I went to therapy. I tried all the systems. And yet here I am still stuck. And that can feel really, really hard to be in that place. And again, if we don't have a lot of self-compassion at this point in our journey, this is an area where a lot of people can get stuck, and we could even be stuck. I mean, I know I was stuck in this space for many years. And now we come to the inner work awakening. And I wish I could tell you, do this and you'll find yourself in an inner work awakening. Take this pill, say this mantra, do this thing. What's beautiful to me, though, is what awakens each of us is as unique and beautiful and special as each one of us are unique and beautiful and special. And you can't predict or force this inner awakening. It just happens. It becomes like a rock stuck in our shoe. And we just can't shake these questions. Maybe there's something deeper. Maybe I need to look within. Maybe there's a complex web of thoughts and beliefs that needs to be dismantled. Maybe it's me. Maybe it's not all the external things I thought it was. And this is where, we harp on pain a lot, and nobody likes to feel pain, but it can be a gift that pushes us past the hardness and the discouragement of these external fixes failing. And we find that oftentimes there's a bit of hope mixed in with our fear. Sometimes that's all we need, just a little bit of hope mixed in with our fear. And this is when we realize I'm the problem. And I don't love that word problem, but you know what I mean. I've got some things to explore if I want to transform. At this point, it is extremely important that we access self-compassion quickly. At this point, this is where oftentimes having a guide, a mentor, a therapist, a friend, a partner who can pour self-compassion on our little souls. Because if we don't access self-compassion quickly, the pain of seeing ourselves as the ones that are getting in our way, or ourselves as the ones that need to be transformed, the pain and shame of that can feel too much if there's no self-compassion. And we will either run away from this work or implode into some deep depression. In order to stay engaged in the work, the self-compassion has got to be there. It's an essential piece that brings us forward. And oftentimes, we do have those people in our lives at this specific space, at this specific time. There's someone in our lives that ends up being that source of self-compassion. And it's so crucial to have that. So now we've stayed in the work, we've gotten a little self-compassion, we realized I don't need to change everything around me. Maybe it's the internal work that needs to happen. And we start, this is actually a very exciting time. We start to see a little bit more clearly, oh, this is why I do what I do. Oh, not everyone thinks this way or acts this way or experiences the world this way. This is where the Enneagram really can accelerate this kind of self-awareness. We can start seeing the root problem. We're digging past the dirt. We're getting a more clear picture of where work needs to be done. I often think of this transformative work as a fruit tree. And we are the fruit tree, and we notice our fruit isn't so good, so we try to pull it off. But of course, the disease does not lie in the fruit. It lies in the root of the tree. So we can pull that fruit off all day, every year, and yet what will reappear the next year is the same fruit, because the problem is much deeper than what appears. And so, you know, if we think of it that way, we're digging past the dirt at this point. We're seeing where the work needs to be done. I can see the root. I'm defining the problem. I'm willing to look in the mirror and hopefully grow in self-compassion. And this is such an exciting time, really is. It could be painful as well as we face some of the reality that maybe not so pretty, but it's exciting because we're starting to see, oh, wait, if I'm identifying the problem, then certainly it's not too far of a step away to fix the problem, right? And now we understand the problem, and yet we find ourselves still stuck. This happens a lot when we have started off real strong in Enneagram work, and then we're kind of in it, and we've been seeing these patterns come around, and we're realizing, oh crap, just knowing the problem isn't actually the same as me being free from it. So we can look at it, we can describe it, we can understand it and articulate it, but I'm still stuck, still feeling these same things over and over again. And this, I don't know if dangerous is the right word, but this is a tricky place to be in Enneagram work or spiritual work, because again, this is where some of that superiority of feeling like, well, I know what it is, and I know what I do, and I know what I should do. And we can almost trick ourselves into thinking that that's the same as actually being free. We can almost want to stop right here at this point because it kind of feels good to know. And yet, if we stay with it, the discomfort will continue to move us forward. And so now we're in the SlowMo moment, where after consistent self-observation and awareness, we find ourselves noticing even before it happens, oh, wait a minute, here comes that email that I always respond to in a certain way. Here comes that conversation with this person that always happens. Here comes that, right? Life is cyclical. And it's beautiful that it's cyclical because it gives us time and time again opportunities to grow and transform. It gives us time and time again a gift of trying one more time and seeing ourselves again. And, you know, this is where we have that choice. I call it the SlowMo moment, like, you know, in the Matrix, when the bullet comes and everything slows down and you can just like, woo, dodge through it. And actually, calling it the SlowMo moment is beautiful as well, because a lot of Enneagram work, especially when you do contemplative practice work, is the art of slowing ourselves down and becoming really attentive and present to what is happening, not just around us, but inside of us. And so a contemplative practice will help you get to the SlowMo moment much quicker, because it by its very nature, a contemplative practice is increasing our connection to our inner awareness. And so now we have this choice. Do I keep doing what I always do, or do I evolve and choose a new way? And here's sort of the choice that each type has. For type 1s, they can choose to fix or allow. And let me just say, it's not necessarily like, well, if you're a type 1 and you choose to fix, then you didn't evolve, you're stuck. No, it's more so about type 1s, are you even allowing yourselves the opportunity to choose? Because for all of us, it's fine for the 1 to fix, it's fine for the 2 to give, it's fine for the 3 to hustle, and so on and so forth. Where we are in bondage is when we only have access to that. And it's not a choice, it's a compulsion. And so the evolving, the expanding is not so much now you have to always allow, or you have to always receive, or you have to always rest. The evolving is in giving yourself the opportunity to even choose which one you would like to access. Because when we're in bondage, we have no choice, and we are always going to go with the fixing or the giving or the hustling or the focusing on what's missing. So I hope you hear that it's not about you have to do this other side. It's about you have the option now to pick which one. So type 1, will you fix or allow? Type 2, will you give or will you allow yourself to receive? Type 3, are you going to hustle or rest? Type 4, will you choose to focus on what's missing or on what's here? Type 5, will you choose to hold back or give out? Type 6, will you stand in distrust or trust? Type 7s, are you swirling in your head or do you feel grounded in your heart? Type 8s, will you build walls or will you soften and feel? And type 9s, will you numb or engage? And again, what we're looking for is, do I even have the capacity to choose one of these? And so now we've reached the fear threshold where we really are confronted with that fear, the deep fear that every type has. And the deep fear that every type has is it just me? Am I alone? Right? If I'm alone, then type 1s, if I'm alone, I must be good and I must make the world right. There's no one else. I have to fix all the things. I have to make the world right because I am alone. And this is where, if you are alone, if that is true, then you don't have a choice to allow. You have to fix. And so you see how believing that you're alone takes away the option of choosing anything other than fixing. For the 2, if you are alone, then you must be loved. And to do that, you've got to provide for all the needs. The only place you're going to get love is from others. And the only way they're going to love you is if you do something for them. Because there's nothing bigger. There's nothing supporting you. There's no divine love access for you. You're cut off, right? This is the lie. This is the fear that we just kind of have subconsciously pulled into our hearts. Type 3, if you're alone, you must find your worth and bring hope to the world, and it's all on you. You got to shine bright. You got to shine bright. There's no other hope. It's got to be on you. So you can never have an off day or take a rest or be subpar, right? Type 4, if you're alone, you've got to create your own significance. You've got to stay connected to your feelings. In fact, heighten those feelings. Make them so big and so magnanimous that you are exceptional and therefore you have significance, because there's no significance for you other than what you create. You're alone. You're alone. This is the fear. This is what the fear is speaking to us. Type 5, if you're alone, you must be competent. You must supply for all of your own needs. You can't depend on anyone. There's no one else but you. Save everything you can save. Your energy, your intellect, your resources. Type 6, if you're alone, you must be secure. You must mitigate all risks. Think ahead. Anything that can happen, got to be prepared for it. You're alone. No one's coming to save you. Type 7, if you're alone, you've got to stay optimistic. You've got to keep searching for satisfaction and safety. Keep going, keep running, keep searching, keep grabbing. Don't stop, don't stop, don't stop. You're alone. Type 8, if you're alone, you've got to protect yourself. And you've got to be strong for others. There's a lot of bad guys out there, 8s. You've got to be the one who's strong. And therefore, you can never be weak. You can never be vulnerable. You can never let them see the chink in your armor. Type 9s, if you're all alone, you have got to maintain peace. You've got to make others comfortable. If you cause waves, that will shatter your relationships and you will be nothing. So this is the fear. And even as I read the fear of your type, you might have felt something in your body. You might have had a reaction, that resonance, that's sitting deep in our bones. That's compelling us to do the things that we always do. In the previous slide, that's what's compelling us to fix, to give, to hustle, to focus on what's missing, to hold back, distrust, swirl in the head, build walls, numb. I have to do all of that if it's true that I'm alone. And so there's no way that we can change our behavior if the fear is still at the root. The fear of not being enough, the fear of needing something more. Oscar Ichazo is one of the sort of grandfathers of the Enneagram, and he says, when we turn away from our primal perfection and our completeness and our unity with the world and God, we create the illusion that we need something exterior to ourselves for our completion. And that's what each type is doing. I need to be good. I need to be helpful. I need to be perfect and successful. I need to be significant and unique. I need to be competent. I need to be safe. I need to be satisfied. I need to be strong. I need to be harmonious. So here's the truth. You actually are complete as you are. Right? So the biggest shaking in our transformation journey is when we realize there's nothing wrong with me in the first place. Right? When we realize we actually don't need to become something more or different or better. And the only way we can embrace this is if we develop something called basic trust. Basic trust is a non-conceptual confidence in the goodness of the universe or God, depending on what you believe. It's an unquestioned implicit trust that there's something about the universe and human nature and life that is inherently and fundamentally good and loving and wishing us the best. And even as I say this, and I feel the same way inside of me, there's part of me that says, no, like there are bad things. There are things that are going to hurt me. There are mean people. What do you mean? Just like trust that it's all good and loving and wishing us the best. And yet at some point inside of us, I know that we all know this to be true, because when we close our eyes and we go to bed, we don't necessarily, unless we're having a real bad day, but for the most part, we don't necessarily fear that the sun will not rise tomorrow. We don't necessarily fear that oxygen will stop flowing in and out of our lungs. We don't necessarily fear that I just won't wake up. I won't open my eyes. Now, we may fear what happens tomorrow or what someone might say to us tomorrow or what might go on tomorrow. But at some point in our bodies, we surrender to sleep because we have a small sliver at the very least of basic trust. And a lot of religions or, spiritual structures have this concept built in, whether it's God is good or God is love or all things work together for good or the universe has your back or things are not happening to you, they're happening for you. This trust is essential to press into in order to cross over the fear thresholds. This trust is something that we don't actually fabricate, but again, as we practice contemplative practices, we find is already there. So rather than saying, I need to have more trust, okay, how do I build it? How do I manufacture it? How do I create it? It's actually already there. I just need to sit with my soul and find it within and notice it and realize that it's already there. I've just been afraid to trust it. So I know this is a little bit spiritual and maybe more than you were hoping to receive, but whatever basic trust looks like for you in whatever structure of spirituality or religion that you believe in, it's essential. because otherwise there's no way any of us are letting go of our personality structure. It's just not safe. Unless there's something bigger holding us, unless we're actually not alone. We're not separated. And so in order to cross over the fear threshold, there is always a little bit of pain before the surrender. We have to believe there's something better on the other side, basic trust. And so I'm willing to push past the fear and let my old patterns fall away, which is the surrender. This is where the transformation happens, through allowing, not through effort, and through trust rather than strategy or striving. And on the other side, what we find is freedom. We find that we're no longer in bondage to our personality because we're no longer believing the lie that we're alone, that we're cut off. We're no longer stuck in a narrative of scarcity. And when this happens, there is a weight that is lifted. There's a true identity that's embodied. This is how we expand beyond the personality type structure and find who we are beneath it all, is in this place of surrender. And it's beautiful. And it's a constant journey through all of these steps, right? This isn't a place that we come to and then, oh, I made it. Yay me. It's a constant state of surrender. So my question to you is, where are you on this timeline? And it's linear here because graphically it's easy to make it linear, but I find I probably should have made it circular because it's more of a loop than a line. And it can even be, you can jump from one point to another without hitting every point in between. I wish it were cut and dry as it looks here in this black and white slide, but it's not. But it is always a good practice to check in with yourself and say, where am I on this timeline? Where do I find myself right now? Am I at the very beginning, that pain point that's awakening, but I think it's all outside of me? Am I trying to fix my surroundings because I don't really feel like I can face that it's me? Am I seeking a solution that's external? Am I in some discouragement because I feel like I failed and I'm not really making progress? You know, where am I? Am I in that SlowMo moment? Am I right there at the edge where I feel like I want to give in to basic trust and I just don't know if I can? Where are you? Where are you on the timeline? This is a constant practice that I'm doing of checking in with myself. And again, not to judge or criticize myself, but simply out of curiosity and with lots of self-compassion. So now that you have sort of an idea of the process and the map and how the Enneagram works into that, I thought we would spend the last little bit of our time tonight talking about some resources that can get you from point A to point B. And then again, like I said, it's a circle and it's a loop, and we'll refresh and redo all the time. But through my own sort of journey through this, phase of transformation, this is what I have found to be resources that are helpful. And the first is information. Now, I know I kind of harped on information. I don't think if you know that you're doing the work, and that is still true, but information is so helpful. Information puts words around our experience. I'm sure as you listened to me explaining these different points, you know what I'm talking about. I'm just putting words to an experience that you've probably already had. And there is something powerful to that. And information, even around your type, is powerful. And it's necessary, I would even say, to some extent. So information, yes, that is part of the package. Self-reflection is another part of the package. And self-reflection to me involves sort of two pieces. And the first I call antagonism. And what I mean by that is someone or something that stirs the pot. Someone or something that makes you look under the rug or makes you look in that corner of your soul that you don't want to look. Someone who will shine a light in the dark places, Maybe it's a book that has, brings things to the surface. Maybe it's some journal prompts or something like that that kind of asks you questions that you haven't wanted to ask yourself. And this antagonism, as always, should come with compassion as well. So it's not just stirring you up for the source of pain, but stirring you up and saying, whatever comes up, I'm here and it's okay. And you're still loved and you're still held, but we need to look. If you want to change. We don't have to, but if you want to, we're going to have to look in some of those places that have been neglected. And I'm here and it's going to be okay, but let's go look. And so antagonism is part of the self-reflection. Accountability is another part. And again, accountability can kind of be a loaded word, but how I would define it is more of someone to come alongside rather than someone to say, be like your mother and be like, have you cleaned your room? Have you done your inner work? So less of that and more of a, I'm in this with you. Can I come alongside you? And can we do this together? The accountability of linking arms rather than the accountability of having like a, taskmaster or something. And then emotional support. This is the compassion piece. I don't know. I don't know if there's a type that can do this without emotional support. I know for sure as a 3, I cannot. I will hit points where my self-compassion will be pretty thin, if not non-existent. And in those moments, I do so appreciate and need someone to remind me of self-compassion. Doing inner work is often said to be work that we must do ourselves, but has to be done in community. Because while no one can do it for me, we are both wounded in community and we heal in community. And there's just something about having someone to lend you a little bit of compassion when you've run out that makes this something that we can do together. So emotional support is something that I have found is invaluable for me. And then growth celebration, maybe because I'm a 3 and I just love having someone cheer me on, especially when I've taken some steps into some scary places. But it also signifies a connection, right? Compassion and connection are key. If disconnection and separation, I'm alone, is what fuels the fear, then compassion and connection is the antidote. Right? That's what reverses some of that feeling of I'm alone. I don't know if I can do this. Having compassion and connection is so key. So these are the resources that I would recommend you start to seek out. Where are some places where you can learn information? Where is there a guide that can help you shine a light in the darkness and walk alongside you with accountability? Is there a group that you can connect to for emotional support and growth celebration? And you can certainly do this on your own. You can certainly do this finding communities and teachers in the Enneagram world at large. Of course, being the person that I am, as I realized that all these pieces were necessary for growth, I was like, okay, how do I create an environment where I can give this to people? How can I create an environment where all of these things are present and we can do this work together? And so, obviously, there's classes and courses and workshops when it comes to information. There's coaching sessions and journaling and self-reflection. That's great for the accountability and the antagonism. And then there's connecting with other individuals who are committed to doing their inner work for the emotional support and growth celebration. And when I was putting together this space to do all of these things, I was kind of thinking through like, okay, how do I make this affordable for people? Like, I know me, and I'm a spender. So I will totally spend, and I have spent on all of these things. And let me tell you, they're 100% worth it. But I just know, coming from, I'm a daughter of immigrants, and I just know self-care is not always something that we feel we have the margin for. So anyways, I created something called the Freedom Seekers Community. And I included in this community everything that I felt like was needed for this transformation process. I have classes in the community, a course that takes you kind of from soup to nuts on the Enneagram, monthly workshops and coaching sessions, smaller cohorts between members. And I tried to price it so that it was something that would fit in and just be that place where you can say, the work itself is hard enough. If I don't have to piece together all the pieces myself and I can just come to this community and have it all laid out for me and set out for me and in place for me, and I just show up, that is just going to be beautiful. At least that's how I feel when I was doing this work. So anyways, so I would love to invite anyone who's looking for this transformation process. Feel free to reach out to me. I may also probably just send an email to everyone who's on this group with just a link to check out the Freedom Seekers community if it's something that would serve you. And again, you can do all of these things on your own. You can do them with a friend. You can do them with another teacher. Regardless of how you go about this transformation process, what I encourage you to do is fill yourself with self-compassion. Surround yourself with a community that will hold you and will hold space for you. And be kind with yourself as you walk through each of these steps. I will be sending the slides as well as the recording when we finish up here. So sit with these slides, even sit with this map. This is the map. And then the way you walk it is up to you. And if I can support you in that, I would love to, but sit with yourself. You know what is best for you to walk through this and how that will feel and how that will look. And I'm just here to cheer you on and hold space for that as best as I can. So that is, that's what I have for you tonight. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.